Neighbours regularly teased him for living in the area's poorest house until a man stepped in. Josh Siganik, a railway track inspector, overheard some young folks make degrading remarks about an elderly guy named Leonard Bullock and his house as he was making his way to work. What the man then did stunned everyone. Josh overheard two adolescents saying that the home should be burnt down because it was in such horrible state on a beautiful summer day. They both looked to be no older than 30 and were quite nicely dressed. He was clearly upset by the remark, Siganik noted. No old person, in my opinion, should have to put up with what those two young adults said. Before he made a decision, he kind of stewed on it for a few days. Leonard sat still, unresponsive, and appeared dejected and reflective. The house was on a little piece of land and was encircled by a broken, old fence that had enormous gaps in it. The wall's paintwork was awful and was coming off. The majority of the windows were damaged and coated in wood fragments. Cans, waste bags, and other stuff were lying about in the yard, which was also a complete mess. It was obvious that the house had not been maintained in years. The moment Leonard saw Josh coming, Leonard hurried inside and closed the door. He presented an apprehensive or even fearful air. Leonard assumed Josh was working for a different major construction business when he saw him in his uniform, since they had been nagging him to relocate for a while. They were eager to destroy his home in order to make room for yet another opulent property. Leonard and his late wife had constructed their home themselves, and they treasured it as a reminder of their hopes and devotion. But they had to deal with the heartache of being unable to have children. Then his wife became unwell, and she eventually passed away, leaving Leonard inconsolable. Josh made the decision to draw attention to his predicament after being deeply impacted by Leonard's difficulties. He called a construction supply company for supplies of paint and made a need for help on social media. Josh put a request for volunteers on his Facebook page after recognizing his need for assistance. He then made a call to a construction supply company and explained what he had seen earlier at the elderly man's house, asking if they might give some paint cans to freshen up the area. The business owners expressed their willingness to assist after being moved by the trail inspector's attitude. Josh didn't expect his message to have any impact, he just intended for his friends to read it, and he hoped that maybe one or two of them might come forward to assist him. Many of his closest friends were being individually phoned by him to see if anybody could lend a hand, but they all had other obligations. To his astonishment, many strangers came forward in response to his request, and more than 95 volunteers showed up at Leonard's home. Some people came from far-off regions to assist. Josh was inspired by the overwhelmingly positive response to assign assignments and effectively use the donated paint. As they watched the metamorphosis, the neighbors grew interested in the ruckus. They were able to paint the interior and outside of the house thanks to the many volunteers and donated paint. While others mowed the lawn and mended the fence, other knowledgeable volunteers checked the plumbing and wiring. The previously abandoned property was surrounded by so much noise and activity that the neighbors couldn't help but gaze and attempt to figure out what was going on. A volunteer publicist who encouraged neighborhood media to cover the event helped spread word of the good gesture and brought attention to the situation of other senior residents of the city. Josh modestly thought he was only doing what anyone should be doing in his situation, but the media made Leonard and Josh into local heroes. Along with fixing the house and garden, the volunteers also made additional contributions. Everyone ate meals prepared by neighborhood neighbors, while others brought Leonard presents and money. Leonard's house was changed by the day's work, which also gave him hope that compassion was still practiced. Leonard thanked Josh for being there because without him, he would have remained alone. Leonard's feelings at the moment were difficult to put into words. But it was true, after all these years, he no longer felt destitute and alone. Instead, he found himself smiling once more. The volunteers felt the value of their contributions adequately after that.